Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Merry stupid o'clock. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. Now, before we get started this morning, a few of the usual disclaimers. First off, you are going to see the link to this op-ed as well as the part of the investigation done in 1995 into the investigation, the death of Linda Cornelison, right there in the description box alongside the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign, including Autistic Hoya's massive archive on the subject, the templates where you just sign your name and click on your senator. We are trying to end adversive therapies, improper restraints, and seclusion in schools. It kills folks every year. And also the ever-present self-explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. Now, trigger warning, when we speak about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you have young children present, please use your headphones. Also, folks, it is, look at this here, 3:02 a.m. stupid o'clock in the morning. So if I stumble over any of my words this morning, stare off into space, or just break down into explicitives, my apologies in advance, all right? So we're going to tackle this op-ed first. This was something that one of my fellows on the Stop the Shocks campaign was sending around either early last night or early this morning. I don't know. What time is it? Who am I and where's my horse? Sorry. Alright, so let's get to it. It's a letter to the editor. I don't want to hear about a concert. Here we are. Okay, Stop the Shock. The recent debate over Bill H-225, by the way, we do have a link to that bill in the description box, an act regarding the use of adversive therapy, has again brought to light the Massachusetts' troubling and unique position on disability rights in the United States. The bill, brought by Representative Danielle Gregoire, seeks to ban the electric shock as punishment for disabled residents of the Judge Rotenberg Center. It also seeks to ban hitting, slapping, pinching, food deprivation, and forms of physical punishment at Massachusetts institutions, including the JRC. Rep. Gregor and her allies have been trying to get this and similar legislation passed for well over a decade with no success. The shock delivered by JRC's device, the Graduated Electronic Decelerator, GED, is more powerful than a police taser and only slightly below the lethal limit for current. The device is only used by the JRC and only for the purpose of adversive therapy applied to disabled residents. Shockable offenses include whispering quietly, attempting to remove the device, crying, saying no for any reason, and standing up or attempting to go to the restroom without permission. How did we get here? Did a state frequently lauded for its early advances in affordable health care, recognition of LGBT rights, and other progressive reforms become the only place in the country where disability is a crime punishable by torture? Thank you. I would like to know as well. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I grew up in Marblehead. Autism is one of the conditions that the JRC treats. I'm in my second year of medical school, but I am not fundamentally less disabled or otherwise more of a person than the JRC's residents. At the end of the day, the only real difference between me and the JRC's victims is that I came from a family that wanted to communicate with me, who saw me as a person, who sought out resources such as the ARC Spotlight program that taught me how to interact with neurotypicals instead of assuming that I lacked the capacity to learn, who always approached me as an individual instead of a problem. Bill H-225 hasn't failed yet this year, but it will if we don't make it clear that this is not what Massachusetts stands for. Please contact your representatives, senators, and other elected officials. Spread the word on social media or in other news outlets. Listen to disabled voices that tell you that we're people and that we should have a say in how we're treated. Thank you. Not our parents, us. I can't say that enough. I'm going to say it again for the idiots in the back. Not our parents, us. Demonstrate that you believe our lives have value and that we should be afforded the same rights granted to convicted felons, political prisoners, POWs, and of earlier this year, dogs. Stop the shock. That's Algernon Ludwig and Robert Road. So basically, it looks like Bill H225 has still not been voted on yet. So we're going to be keeping an eye on that, all right? Okay, now we're going to go back into the investigation of the Linda Cornelison case. And I have a feeling, yep. Thanks, computer. Give me just a minute, guys. I'm sorry. We got to try and find where we were. All right, folks, give me just a second. I'm going to go to my last video. I'm sorry if you're going to see me play it a little bit, but I just got to see it so I can see where we left off. It's 3:07 a.m. in the morning, my defense. Alright, give me just a moment here. Okay, I just need to see where I ended, what page I was on. I gotta move this so I can see. Okay. You were on page 18. Okay. Stupid computer. Technology, right? Alright, here we go. So here's where we left off. Conclusions with respect to chronology, events, and actions between December the 11th and December the 19th, 1990. This would be interesting. Between December 11th and 14th, 1990, based on available evidence and recollections of witnesses, on balance, there was no reason to suspect that I was suffering from a gastrointestinal illness. Really? So you would say what? That her behavior was willful and she wanted attention? God, I hate people. This conclusion is reached notwithstanding the possible conflicting evidence that I was not eating all or part of her meals beginning on December 11th, and the fact that it cannot be determined from BRI's record keeping whether Vi's lack of eating during this period was because she was ill or because of her behaviors. Oh, for fuck's sake, people, if it is out of character, it means it wasn't her having a behavior. What is wrong with you people? God damn, if someone is acting out of character, something is wrong. It's not rocket science. It's just common fucking sense. And what's really sad, folks, is common sense is no longer common. Moving on. For example, the calorie recording sheets, which record the amount of calories, do not indicate why the student is eating less than their full allotment. The reliability of the calorie recording sheets is open to question for other reasons discussed above. See findings for AC. Additionally, daily behavior tally sheets are not preserved. Oh, for fuck's sake. Goddamn. See, we have a problem here, and it's still a problem. Even well after 1995, this idea of, but how can we tell whether they just want attention or not? If someone's acting out of character, you idiots, something is wrong. Figure it out. Ugh. God, I hate people. Moving on. Thus, the possibility exists that Vi was not eating because of illness as early as 4 to 7 days before her marked determination on December the 18th, 1990. However, the overwhelming weight of the witness accounts, including Vi's mother on December the 15th, was that there was no overt signs or symptoms during December the 11th to 14th that would raise the index of suspicion that Vi was ill. No, she was only holding her stomach and acting way out of character, out of the norm for her. But that's no reason to suspect something is wrong. God, you all are ableist cunts. Beginning on December the 15th, 1990, Vi began showing signs and symptoms of illness, which, as detailed in findings and summarized below, became progressively worse on December the 16th and 17th. BRI nursing staff did not check Vi concerning these signs and symptoms until shortly after 9 a.m. on December the 18th, 1990, 2 to 3 days after onset. It is undetermined whether or not W1 notified nursing of Vi's illness in the morning of December the 17th. While she believes she may have, there is no record of the notification, and nursing staff do not recall being notified. Yeah, I'm gonna trust them. Sure. That the first contact due to this illness did not occur by nursing personnel until shortly after 9 a.m. on December the 18th, 1990, constitutes an unacceptable delay in initiating observation and or monitoring by nursing staff given Vi's presentation beginning on December the 15th or 16th, when she began to refuse her dinner and other meals, which was of concern to staff since Vi always ate. Considering that was going on since December the 11th, you think they would have maybe possibly thought that something was going on, but oh no, not these people. On December the 16th, she began displaying other signs of illness to include such uncharacteristic behavior as refusing snacks on bus, getting out of her seat on the bus, acting fidgety, and making unusual sounds. On December the 17th, there was a continuation and worsening of the above-mentioned uncharacteristic signs. At night, staff noted she appeared sick and looked pale, and during the night she kept getting out of bed and walking to the door and going back to bed. Vi never had out-of-the-bed behavior, but was very lost, looking all around her like she didn't know where she was. She attempted to vomit but couldn't, and her eyes were glassy. She was awake all night, sticking fingers in her throat. During the early morning hours, December 17th, 18th, staff administered an uncharacteristically high number of adversives to Vi, recent to relative recent periods, for presentations interpreted as target behaviors. For the love of God, really? Including spatula spanks, muscle squeezes, ammonia, and taste adversives. Vi cognitive and communication limitations precluded clear communication of her distress, mandating that staff err on the side of caution by seeking hands-on medical evaluation. It is concluded that PC1, after receiving notification approximately at 9 a.m. on December the 18th, promptly examined Vi, and subsequent to examination, most likely in the morning, telephoned W2. However, the assessment initially and during the day were deficient in the following ways. No written documentation of a physical examination was made. The only information about a physical examination was on the daily nursing body check sheet, which indicated that the nurse apparently looked in Vi's ears for wax, and noted that she was pale. Her temp was 98.4. There was no information about abdominal exam. Nurse body check sheets are filled out routinely regardless of whether an individual is sick. This sheet was not properly signed and had other deficiencies. PC1 did not obtain from staff a sufficient history of bias scores over the previous 24 to 72 hours, or when staff began noting changes in presentation. The only written information provided by PC1 on the previous period was that Vi had been awake all night, sticking fingers in the throat. Thus, duration, severity, type, and amount of signs and symptoms over the past 24 to 72 hours do not appear to have been obtained or considered by PC1. PC1 also interpreted what little information she obtained as symptoms of biased behavior rather than illness, e.g. sitting in the puddle and having to be carried in, which is fucking insane. While there is some historical information to indicate that such an explanation was possible, the overwhelming weight of the evidence available then indicates that this and other behaviors were uncharacteristic of Vi, particularly when taken together with the behaviors on the immediately preceding vehicle ride, the night and 2 to 3 days before. As Consultant Walsh concluded, in discussion with PC1, RN, and PC3, LPN, they both verbalized their concerns via an ongoing abdominal process. However, the only written documentation was a note regarding the wax in Vi's ears. There is no written evidence that Vi received an ongoing attention described. There are errors of omission. This appears to be an underlying problem at BRI, as formal nursing documentation policies are non-existent at the BRI. Adherence to acceptable standards for nursing documentation are non-existent. Consultant Walsh also found that PC1 never participated in any formal assessment course for nurses. The length of time from nursing school graduation, approximately 40 years, and her current clinical responsibilities, such a course should have been mandatory. Oh, yeah. Nursing staff's intervention and other actions were not adequate during the course of the day. According to the nurse body check sheet, Vi was allowed to rest and to be given frequent fluids. However, despite the accumulative evidence and the fact that Vi had to be carried into the school in the morning after uncharacteristically sitting in a puddle, and her continued to refuse to eat, she was merely placed on low demands and not taken off adversives, which nursing staff had the authority to do. Nursing staff did not check Vi after 3 p.m., even though she continued at the day program until 5 p.m. when she left for home. Nursing staff nor responsible first shift personnel communicated with second shift personnel about Vi's illness. See Walsh report, page 12. Nursing staff did not, for example, provide instructions about whether or when to call them or other medical personnel. As a result of this lack of communication and coordination, when signs and symptoms occurred after 3 p.m., and Vi's supervisory staff continued to interpret her presentation as behavioral and not of distress as a result of illness until approximately 8 p.m., though they did note that she was not herself. Thus, between 3:52 and 7 p.m., 56 physical adversives administered, 13 spanks with a spatula, 29 finger pinches, and 14 muscle squeezes, and 5 odor adversives while she was sick, and very likely in consequence for behaviors resulting from deteriorating medical condition and pain. Imagine that, folks. Imagine that. You're ill, and therefore you are acting as though you are ill, and then you are punished for it, on top of what you're already going through. It's horrifying. And the level of incompetence of the staff is horrifying. My God, elementary school teachers could tell when I was in distress, and they didn't write it off as behaviors. God's sake. The staff on the second shift were not being aware of previous symptoms of Vi's course during this day, and or not having been alerted by nursing staff, were not in a position to fully and accurately assess Vi's situation and take necessary steps in a timely manner. No one person was in a position to view and assess Vi's problems longitudinally. Staff were not alerted to the problem, and nursing was not monitoring the situation after 3 p.m., as found by the consultant Walsh. Moreover, despite reappearance of old behaviors in the face of an acute illness, staff continued to prescribe aversive therapies to an obviously ill young woman, rather than consider other possible etiologies. PC1's lack of information transferred to the second shift staff regarding Vi's illness delayed medical attention as behaviors, rather than illness, were treated during the late afternoon and evening hours. This lack of communication and coordination between shifts, lack of instruction and or nurse monitoring after 3 p.m., constitutes omission on the part of the BRI administration and nursing staff, resulted in a delay in treatment, and was contributory cause to Vi's demise. Oh, they are 100% responsible. Don't give me this shit. And do this victim blaming shit, but we didn't know. They might have been behaviors. We didn't know. Oh shit. Do you or do you not have a medical license? Because if you do, you should have known. Fucking seriously. Moving on. As found by Dr. Grab, unfortunately in this case it appears from available data that no one at the residence was informed of the necessity for observation, that competent staff was not available, that there was a significant delay in recognition of evidence of a critical situation, and once the nature of the emergency had been identified, definitive surgery was not performed within a reasonable period of time. Thus, if evidence as described is confirmed, the care provided to Vi failed to conform to standards prevalent in the community, it may have contributed to her death. May. Really. When staff person W1 called PC1 at 8 p.m. and nursing contact was finally reestablished, given the severity of Vi's condition and duration, for PC1 to direct Vi to wait for W3 to arrive as opposed to immediately obtaining emergency medical intervention constituted poor judgment was contrary to good healthcare practice. As stated by Dr. Robb, inexplicably she was delayed via ambulance call until arrival and corroboration of someone she believed had more expertise or authority. It is my impression that she had been employed to perform such tasks. Thank you. The medical technician did not arrive until 20 to 30 minutes later. It did not contact emergency medical services until 8:39 p.m. Thus, PC1's actions omission resulted approximately a 40-minute delay in the activation of the EMS services from 8 p.m. point. Waiting for and relying on the judgment of a person certified to give out medication is no substitute for nursing, medical, or EMT evaluation, which was clearly and immediately needed, given the description of Vi's condition at 8 p.m. PC1's request for staff to wait W3 further delayed acute care instructions. Yeah. As put by consultant Wash, a contributing factor to the 8:34 delays was, from discussions with staff, there is no differentiating between licensure and clinical ability responsibilities that perceive clinical nursing staff. For fuck's sake, so they can be not even trained in nursing and still give advice. This is insane. In my discussion with staff, there was no ability to differentiate from PC1's role from that of the other nursing LPN staff. Moreover, PC1, when contacted by direct care staff as to acute presentation by Vi, requested staff to wait for W3, a certified medication administrator. Such a delay was unnecessary and unwarranted. Amen. Another contributory factor in the above omissions in Ms. Vi's death is BRI's lack of policies or procedures which provide instruction to staff on when and how to notify nursing or medical staff when a consumer appears ill. The lack of such policy and procedures caused or contributed to the staff, nursing, supervising, and direct care to erroneously interpret her signs of illness as behaviors. This resulted in Vi receiving punishment instead of treatment for her illness, both on the overnight of December the 17th and during the late afternoon or early evening of December the 18th. The lack of policies and procedures to assist staff in the differentiation of signs and symptoms of illness or behaviors, some in this case not in evidence for several years, can be construed as having a significant impact on the proper diagnosis, treatment, and outcome of this unfortunate death. Such lack of policies and procedures persist at BRI. This is both dangerous and inhumane as consumers at BRI continue to be placed at risk of not having acute or emergency care medical needs met, being punished rather than treated when they show signs of distress resulting from illness. As noted by Consultant Walsh, despite request, this consultant was not provided in policy, procedure, or information indicative of BRI's cognizance of current acceptable standards of nursing practice. The promptness with which the emergency medical system arrived, assessed the situation, and transported Vi to the hospital is in accord with acceptable emergency medical practice. Despite the fact that she was clearly ill on the night of December the 17th and through the day of December the 18th, Vi was forced to endure lengthy bus rides to and from the day program and remain at the day program all day. While there is no evidence that these circumstances exacerbated her condition, forcing Vi to travel to and from school and attend all day while she was ill constitutes inhumane treatment. As Consultant Walsh also found, students who are deemed ill are allowed to rest in their classroom, a situation which could be extremely problematic for a case of communicable disease. Subjecting Vi to adverses on December the 17th and December the 18th while she was ill, and in consequence for behaviors resulting from her deteriorating gastrointestinal condition and pain, constituted abuse under MGLA, EDSEC, and mistreatment under 104 CMR. In addition to violating these laws, BRI's actions toward Vi in this regard violated the most basic code and standards of decency and humane treatment. This was a young woman seriously and obviously ill, and particularly vulnerable due to her disabilities, who, when she displayed signs of illness and non-verbally communicated pain, was spanked with an implement, subject to muscle squeezes and finger pinches, and forced to inhale ammonia and ingest vinegar mix, jalapeno pepper, or hot sauce. Her disability also made her unable to effectively protest. Practices at BRI also meant that her attempt at protestation or any non-compliant behavior would and very likely did result in further adverse consequences. In sum, these adverse actions are inhuman beyond all reason and constitute violation of above-mentioned legal standards as well as universal standards of human decency. At fault were the direct care staff for administering the painful adversives through their actions as mitigated by factors B, C, and D below. The nursing staff and PC1 in particular for not ordering Vi off adversives and not notifying second shift staff about her condition. W12 for granting approval for a staff request for an increase of adversives above the normal limit of 40 to 95, without adequate or possibly any inquiry. BRI administration for not having clear policies and instructions to staff on differentiating between behaviors to be consequented and signs of illness, and the appropriate action to take in case of the latter, and for maintaining and fostering such one-dimensional behavioral orientation that personal view and treat pain and illness presentation with punishment rather than with appropriate nursing or medical care, as was also concluded by Dr. Duarte. Most disturbing of all was that a high number of punishment procedures were administered to Vi just prior to her death, after staff had already formally reported that she appeared to be ill for 2 consecutive days. Think about it. Freaking horrifying. The aforementioned acts and or omissions by BRI and its staff, including the cited lack of BRI's policies and procedures, constitute mistreatment under 104 CMR 20.07 and abuse under MGL C19, which contributed to Vi's death. These acts and omissions include but are not limited to failure of nursing staff to conduct and document a proper physical assessment both earlier and in a complete and proper manner, failure to initiate observation and monitoring earlier, failure to treat her signs of distress as illness rather than behaviors to be punished, failure of nursing staff to consistently monitor Vi's condition, including at and after 3 p.m. before they went off shift, failure by nursing and or supervisory staff to communicate to direct care staff to include second shift personnel that Vi was ill and provide instruction regarding the same, thus causing or contributing to a delay in earlier, possibly life-saving medical intervention, delaying in and obtaining appropriate nursing, medical, or emergency services evaluation after 8 p.m. on December the 18th. Conclusions with regard to the chronology and events once Vi arrived at Sturdy Memorial Hospital at 9:01 p.m. on December the 18th are deferred pending an examination by the Medical Board of Registration and Department of Health, to which agencies a referral to this matter should be made. Though it should be noted that Dr. Rabb found that definitive surgery was not performed with a reasonable period of time once the nature of the emergency had been identified. Alright, we'll get into Dr. Rabb's findings tomorrow, but I want you to imagine that you're Linda in this, and you are suffering from horrible pain in your stomach. And instead of getting the medical care that you very obviously need, you are instead punished for displaying behaviors. Yeah, and the fact that in 1995, one of the times that's supposed to be a progressive era, where we were coming out of the darkness, so to speak, that they still thought back then, while they're going through this document saying they should have did, but the other behaviors, should they just been behaviors, should have been punished. No, Karen, no. All right, you should not be punishing a disabled person for being disabled for how their freaking brain fires. Okay. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and close out this morning. We don't get very many views on this channel, especially on this subject. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, please don't forget to hit that like button, hit subscribe, don't forget to hit comments. I do appreciate your time this morning. As always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.